It started with a knock on the front door that I wasn't expecting. I was still in my pajamas, bowl of cereal half finished, when I heard it, 2 short raps followed by the low creak of the front door opening. My mom shouted something from the laundry room, and I figured it was just a delivery guy, until I heard his voice. "Hey, is this still a good time?" That voice made me stop mid-bite. I peeked around the hallway corner, and there he was, Dylan, my older brother's best friend, standing in our foyer with a beat-up duffel bag over his shoulder and a tired smile that didn't match the usual cocky confidence I remembered from high school. "It's him," I whispered under my breath. I hadn't seen Dylan since he left for college 3 years ago. He and Nate, my brother, had been tight all through high school. Inseparable, annoying, always stealing snacks and hogging the basement TV. Back then, I was just the quiet younger brother they barely noticed unless I was in the way. But now he was here, in our house, and I was very aware of just how much he'd changed. His hair was shorter, messier in a deliberate kind of way. He'd filled out, broad shoulders under a zip hoodie, strong hands clutching that worn-out bag like it was all he owned. And his face, while still boyish, had this new seriousness to it, like life had kicked him around a little. My mom came out, drying her hands on a dish towel. "Of course it's a good time. Your family, Dylan. Come in, come in. You remember Jesse, right?" I straightened up awkwardly as she gestured toward me. Dylan's eyes met mine. Something flickered there. "Yeah," he said. "Of course I remember Jesse." I forced a nod. Hey man, you've grown up." It wasn't just polite small talk. There was a pause, just long enough for it to feel loaded. I didn't know what he meant exactly, but I felt it in the way his eyes lingered. A second too long before he looked away. The story of why Dylan had moved in was a mess of its own. Something about financial aid falling through, his dorm situation collapsing, and his parents not picking up his calls. Nate was doing his first year of med school out of state, so the "just crash with us for a while" invite had come from my mom. What none of us expected was that Dylan would be living in the room right next to mine. That first week was weird. We were polite, cordial. We passed each other in the hall, in the kitchen, in the living room. He'd always nod and smile. Sometimes he'd say my name like he was still getting used to it. And every time, I'd get that flutter in my chest I wasn't proud of. I'd had a thing for Dylan back in high school. Of course, I never said anything. He was straight, or at least straight acting. He had that all-American jock thing going on back then. Girls loved him, teachers loved him, even my dad loved him. And I was just the quiet art kid who hung out in the library. But now, we were older, both of us. And something felt different. I started noticing small things. Like the way he'd lean on the kitchen counter with his sleeves pushed up, forearms tensed as he scrolled through his phone. Or the way he'd stand in the hallway after a shower, still towel drying his hair, shirtless like it was nothing. Sometimes I'd catch him looking at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. One night, I was on the couch sketching with my headphones in, music low enough that I could still hear the house settle around me. Dylan came in from a late shift at the gas station, kicked off his boots, and collapsed next to me with a groan. "Long day?" I asked, pulling one earbud out. "You have no idea." He leaned his head back, closed his eyes. "If I have to clean one more mystery stain out of the bathroom, I'm quitting and living off Pop-Tarts." I laughed. He cracked an eye open and smiled. "What are you drawing?" "Nothing, just..." I held up the sketch pad, suddenly self-conscious. He leaned closer, squinting at the pencil lines. "Is that me?" I froze. Shit. I'd been sketching from memory. A pose he made the other day, shirtless, leaning in the kitchen doorway like he owned the place. I hadn't meant to make it obvious, but there it was. He looked up at me, his face unreadable. "You're really good," he said after a beat. Like, really good. I cleared my throat. "Thanks. Sorry, that's weird, I guess." "No, man," he said, voice softer now. "I think it's kinda cool." He looked at me for a long second. I didn't know what he was thinking. I couldn't tell if he was freaked out or flattered. but then he said something I didn't expect. "You know, you're not who I remember." My brows knit. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "You used to be so quiet. Like I never really knew you, but now..." He trailed off, eyes meeting mine again. That same flicker I saw the day he arrived was back. And this time, it didn't feel like an accident. After that moment on the couch, things between Dylan and me shifted in a way I couldn't define. We didn't talk about the sketch, but it hung there between us like smoke, visible if you knew where to look. He didn't tease me about it, didn't joke the way I half expected him to. Instead, he started spending more time around me. Some nights, after work, he'd crash on the couch while I was drawing, flipping through my sketchbooks without asking, making quiet comments about the details I captured. He was observant in a way I didn't expect from someone like him, someone I used to peg as just another jock with a good smile and bad grades. One evening, about 2 weeks after he'd moved in, he knocked on my bedroom door around midnight. "Hey," he said when I opened it, "you still up?" I nodded, pushing the door open a little more. "Yeah. What's up?" He scratched his head, sheepish. "Can't sleep. Mind if I hang in here for a bit?" I stepped aside. He came in, shirtless, wearing just mesh shorts. I tried not to look, but I looked. He dropped onto the edge of my bed like he owned the place. "Your room's colder," he said, flopping back onto the pillows. "You could just turn on the fan in yours." "Yeah, but then I'd be alone and bored." I rolled my eyes but smiled. "So this is about you being lonely?" "Pretty much." I went back to my desk, trying to focus on my sketchbook, but my concentration was shot. He was right there, lying on my bed, stretching his arms behind his head, his chest rising and falling with slow, steady breaths. I could smell his deodorant, clean and warm, like cedarwood and something faintly sweet. He stayed quiet for a while, watching the ceiling like it had answers. Then he asked, "You ever think about how weird it is, the way people see you?" I glanced at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean, people think they know who you are. Like back in high school, I thought you were just Nate's shy little brother. Quiet, artsy, kind of a ghost." "Thanks," he chuckled. "I didn't mean it in a bad way. Just, you surprised me, is all. You're not like I remembered." I turned back to my sketchbook, heart hammering. "You're different too," I said without thinking. He sat up a little, resting his weight on his elbows. Yeah. You used to be kind of a dick." He burst out laughing. "Damn, that's fair, but I'm trying to be better." There was a pause, a long one. Then he said, "I notice things now, stuff I didn't before." I didn't ask what he meant. I was too afraid of the answer. A few nights later, the tension reached its breaking point. It was late. Almost 2 a.m., and I couldn't sleep. I went downstairs for water and found Dylan in the kitchen, shirtless again, leaning against the counter with a half-empty glass in his hand. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked. He looked up, his expression unreadable in the low kitchen light. "Yeah. Weird dreams." I grabbed a glass, filled it, and leaned next to him against the counter. We stood in silence, just sipping our drinks. Then he said, "Can I ask you something kind of personal?" "Sure. You ever think about me?" I nearly choked. "What?" His voice was low, careful. "I mean, like that sketch. That wasn't the first time, right? You've thought about me before." I didn't know what to say. My brain shut down. Every alarm bell in my body was going off, and yet I couldn't bring myself to lie. "Yeah," I said finally, barely above a whisper. "I have." He nodded slowly, setting his glass down. "I thought so." Then he turned toward me, stepping just a little closer. "I've been thinking about you too, lately. More than I should." My breath caught. "Dylan, what are you doing?" He took another step, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off his skin. "I don't know," he said. "That's the problem." I didn't move. Couldn't. My whole body was frozen. Then, Just like that, he stepped back. "Sorry," he said, "I should go to bed." And he left, padding up the stairs and disappearing into his room. I stood there, alone in the kitchen for a long time, heart pounding, my glass sweating in my hand. I knew everything had changed, but I had no idea where it was going. After that night in the kitchen, things between Dylan and me turned into this constant, quiet tug of war. He didn't bring it up again, but something was different. The way he looked at me lingered longer than it used to. The casual touches, his hand on my shoulder, a knee brushing mine on the couch, weren't accidental anymore, and I stopped pretending not to notice. We circled around each other like magnets, drawn together and then pulling away, neither of us saying what we were both thinking. Maybe we were scared of what it would mean to say it out loud. Maybe we didn't want to risk whatever fragile thing we'd found in each other. But then came the night he didn't leave. It was a Thursday, late October, cold enough that the heat had started kicking on in the evenings. I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone with the lights off, when I heard the soft knock. "Yeah?" I called. The door creaked open. Dylan stepped inside, hoodie zipped up, hands buried in the pocket. "You up?" "Kind of," I said, sitting up. "What's up?" He didn't answer at first, just stood there in the dark, lit only by the faint glow of my screen. Then slowly, he closed the door behind him. "I don't really feel like sleeping alone tonight," he said. My heart skipped. "Okay." He crossed the room and sat on the edge of my bed like it was normal, like we'd done this before. "You good?" I asked, watching him. He nodded, but his jaw was tense. "Just stuff on my mind. Can I crash here?" I hesitated, then pulled the covers back a little. "Yeah, sure." He lay down next to me, both of us on our backs, staring at the ceiling. The silence stretched. I don't know how long we lay there before he whispered, "You ever wonder if you're just wired wrong?" I turned my head. "No, I used to, but not anymore." He let out a slow breath. "It's like, sometimes I think about stuff and it doesn't make sense. The way I look at you, the way I feel around you. I didn't grow up thinking this was something I'd ever deal with." My throat tightened. "You don't have to explain." "Yeah, I do," he said, voice quiet but firm. "Because I don't want you thinking I'm messing with you. I'm not. I just don't know what I'm doing." I shifted onto my side to face him. "You don't have to know. I don't either." He turned toward me too, our faces inches apart in the dark. We stayed like that, silent, staring, for what felt like forever. And then he reached out and touched my face. His fingers were tentative, like he was testing the shape of a new reality. I didn't pull away. I couldn't. "Is this okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah." His hand moved down, resting on my chest, the weight of it grounding, calming. Then he leaned in, slow, cautious, unsure. Our lips met, hesitant at first, like we were afraid it would break something. But it didn't. It made something else start. He pulled back just an inch. I've wanted to do that for days. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "You're not the only one." He smiled, barely visible in the dark. "I don't know what this means." "We don't have to figure it out right now," I whispered. "We're here. That's enough." He exhaled, his forehead touching mine. "You're kinda everything I didn't know I needed." I didn't say anything to that, just rested my hand on his chest, feeling his heart pounding under my palm. He stayed the night. Not just lying beside me, but holding me, tangled up in a quiet closeness I never thought I'd get with him. We didn't do anything more than kiss, but somehow it felt more intimate than anything I'd ever experienced. And in the morning, when the sun crept in through the blinds and warmed the edge of the bed, he was still there, still holding me. Still Dylan, but not the version I'd known. This was new. This was real. After that night, Dylan didn't go back to his own room. Not permanently, at least. He still kept his clothes there, still used it when he needed space or when my mom was around. But when it was late, and the house was quiet, and we both knew no one would notice. He always came back to mine. We didn't talk about it in any official way. There were no dramatic labels, no "what are we" conversations. But something settled between us, something steady and real. He touched me differently now. He looked at me like I was someone he wanted to know in every possible way. And I was falling for him, quietly, breathlessly. It started showing in small ways. He'd cook breakfast just for the two of us when my mom left for work early. He'd bring me snacks while I was studying and sit next to me, our knees brushing like that was just normal now. He'd play with the hem of my hoodie while we watched TV, like he couldn't not touch me, even if it was barely anything. But people noticed. The first time was my cousin, Caleb. He came over one Saturday afternoon for a movie marathon. Dylan and I were curled up on the couch, a throw blanket half over us without much subtlety. Caleb didn't say anything right away, just raised an eyebrow when he caught Dylan casually reaching into the bowl of popcorn. One was holding in my lap. Halfway through the dark night, Caleb leaned over and whispered, "So are you two a thing? Or do you just sit like that with every guy who sleeps in your bed?" I choked on a sip of soda. Dylan just smirked, completely unbothered. "We're comfortable. Got a problem with that?" Caleb held his hands up. "Nope, just confirming the vibe." After that, I didn't really care who picked up on it. My mom still had no clue, or maybe she did, and just didn't want to say anything. Dylan played it straight around her, but the second she'd leave the room, his hand would brush mine, or he'd nudge me with his foot under the table. It was thrilling and terrifying, and quietly the best thing I'd ever had. One night we ended up out in the garage. Dylan had found my dad's old punching bag and decided to go a few rounds to blow off steam. I sat on the freezer, sipping a Gatorade and watching him work. He was shirtless again, sweat glistening across his shoulders, muscles flexing with every punch. I didn't even try to pretend I wasn't staring. He noticed. "You've been quiet," he said, panting slightly. I shrugged. "Just thinking." He stepped back from the bag and grabbed a towel. "About?" I hesitated. Then, "This. Us." He wiped his face and tossed the towel over his shoulder. "You good with it?" "I am," I said. "Are you?" He leaned against the workbench, arms crossed. "Yeah. I've never done this before. Any of it." I nodded. "I know." He walked over and stood between my knees, gently resting his hands on my thighs. "But when I'm with you, it feels right. Like I'm finally doing something that makes sense." I looked up at him, my chest tight. "You don't have to have all the answers." "I don't," he said, "but I know I don't want to stop whatever this is." "Good," I said quietly, "because neither do I." He leaned in and kissed me, slow, unrushed. The garage smelled like sweat and oil and faint old cologne, but all I felt was him. His warmth, his strength, the softness under all that bravado he showed the world. That night, he didn't even wait for everyone to fall asleep. He came into my room around 10, pulled off his hoodie, and climbed into bed like he belonged there. And yeah, maybe he did. The thing about happiness is you never really trust it while you're living in it. At least I didn't. For a few weeks, things with Dylan felt good, not perfect. He still had these moments where he'd get distant, usually when my mom was around, or when his phone buzzed and he'd stare at it for a long second before silencing it. But good, we were in this little bubble, and even though we hadn't defined it, I was starting to feel safe in it. And maybe that's why it hurt so bad when the bubble popped. It started with a text I wasn't meant to see. We were watching a game in the living room, and Dylan had gone to the kitchen for snacks. His phone buzzed on the coffee table next to mine. I didn't mean to snoop. I really didn't. But when the screen lit up, I caught a name I hadn't seen before. Madison. Then, a preview of the message. "Are we still talking tonight? I miss you." I stared at it too long. Long enough that when Dylan came back with chips and a bottle of soda, he saw the look on my face before I could hide it. He glanced down at his phone. Then, back at me. "I can explain," he said, voice already defensive. "You don't have to," I said, standing too fast. "I get it. Jesse, it's not, she's not." "Not what?" I snapped. Not into you? Or not your girlfriend? He set the snacks down harder than necessary. She's someone I used to talk to, okay? From back home. I haven't seen her since the summer. It's not what you think. But you didn't block her. Or tell her to stop texting. Why? He ran his hand through his hair, pacing a little. I don't know. Maybe because I'm still figuring this out. And she's a reminder of before. When things were simple. My chest clenched. So I make things complicated. He looked at me, regret already written across his face. That's not what I meant. But it's what you said. He sighed, stepping closer. I don't want to screw this up, Jesse. You don't understand. This is new for me. I've never let anyone in like this. It scares the hell out of me. You think it doesn't scare me? I asked, voice shaking. But I still chose it. I chose you. He opened his mouth to speak, but I didn't wait. I brushed past him and went upstairs to my room, closing the door behind me. He didn't follow. That night was the first in weeks I slept alone. The bed felt bigger, colder, too quiet without his soft breathing beside me. In the morning, his door was shut. The kind of shut that said don't. He stayed in there all day. I heard the shower turn on once, the toilet flush, but that was it. No footsteps down the stairs, no knock on my door. It was like we'd gone back to the beginning, strangers sharing a hallway. And I hated how quickly I missed him. That weekend, my mom left for a conference in Sacramento. It was just Dylan and me in the house again, like old times, but now with a silence that had weight to it. I came home Saturday evening to find him in the backyard, kicking a deflated soccer ball against the fence. His hoodie was zipped halfway, and his jaw was clenched like he'd been arguing with himself all day. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed. You gonna keep pretending I don't exist? He turned slowly, met my eyes. No, he said. I'm done with that. He walked toward me, hands in his hoodie pockets. When he stopped in front of me, I could see the bags under his eyes, the exhaustion, the regret. I told her to stop texting, he said. Blocked her. Deleted the thread. You can check if you want. I don't want to check, I said. I just wanted you to choose. I did, he said. But I panicked. I didn't know if I deserved this, deserved you. So I kept holding on to a version of my life that doesn't even fit anymore. I looked at him, really looked at him. And now, he swallowed. Now, I just want to be in this, with you. No confusion, no excuses. I didn't say anything. Instead, I stepped forward, wrapped my arms around his waist, and buried my face in his hoodie. He exhaled, arms wrapping around me tightly. I'm still figuring it out, he whispered against my hair, but I want to figure it out with you. And in that moment, I believed him. After that night in the backyard, Dylan didn't just change, he showed up in small, intentional ways that made it clear he wasn't running anymore. He came into my room again, like he had before, but this time he didn't wait until the house was quiet. He didn't glance over his shoulder or hesitate at my door. He just walked in, sat on the bed, and said, "Scoot over." And I did. We didn't rush into anything new. We didn't suddenly start holding hands in front of people or posting cryptic song lyrics on Instagram. It was quieter than that, more private, but every day, he gave me a little more of himself. He'd make me coffee in the mornings, even though he hated the taste. He started leaving his hoodies in my room, on purpose. He'd sit behind me while I drew, arms around my waist, chin on my shoulder, just there. It was domestic, uncomplicated, until it wasn't. Because eventually, Nate came home. My older brother walked in with his usual loud energy and medical school tired eyes, tossing his duffel on the floor like he'd never left. I hadn't seen him in months, and we hugged and caught up like normal, but then his eyes landed on Dylan, who had just walked into the kitchen in one of my hoodies, his brows knit. Yo, what's he doing here? Nate asked, glancing between us. Dylan cleared his throat. Staying here, for now. You serious? Nate looked at me. I thought you hated having people in your space, I shrugged. It's different. Nate stared at me for a beat too long, then his expression shifted, Slowly, subtly, like pieces were falling into place. The way Dylan leaned just slightly closer to me. The way I stood, like I didn't want him to move. "Oh," he said under his breath. Dylan stepped forward. "Look, man, if this is gonna be weird," Nate held up a hand. "Nah, just surprised, that's all." He didn't say anything more about it that day, or the next, but I could tell he was watching us now. Carefully, curiously, and I wasn't sure what to do with that. A few nights later, I came home from a shift at work and found Nate in the kitchen alone, nursing a beer and staring out the window. "Hey," I said cautiously. He nodded. "Hey." I moved to grab a glass of water. Silence stretched. Then he said, "So how long's that been going on?" I didn't pretend not to know what he meant. "A while," I said quietly. "Started when you were gone." He nodded again, slow, thoughtful. "And you're happy?" I looked at the floor, then back at him. "Yeah, I am." He took a sip of his beer. "Cool." I waited. "That's it?" He shrugged. "What, you want a speech? I mean, I didn't see it coming, but I'm not a dick. I just hope he's good to you." I smiled. "He is." "Cool," Nate said again. "Then that's all that matters." And just like that, something in my chest loosened. The fear I hadn't even realized I was still carrying around. The fear of not being accepted, of being less in my brother's eyes. Let go of me. Winter came fast that year. The first snow dusted the driveway like powdered sugar, and Dylan stood at the window in his sweatpants, sipping coffee like a middle-aged dad. "You ever think about the future?" he asked. I looked up from my sketchbook. "Like, in general?" He turned, eyes softer than usual. "Like, what we're doing, you and me." I set the sketchbook down. "I think about it," I said. "I just don't want to rush it." He crossed the room, sat beside me on the bed, and took my hand. "I'm not trying to rush anything," he said, "but I want you to know I'm not going anywhere." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw it. The boy who used to be my brother's best friend. The guy who once made my stomach twist with nerves every time he walked into a room, now sitting in front of me, holding my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I know," I whispered, and I believed it. Dylan didn't go anywhere. He stayed, not just in the literal sense, like still crashing in our guest room or drinking too much coffee in our kitchen, but in the deeper, scarier way, the real way. He stayed with me. Weeks turned into months. We fell into a rhythm that felt like something real, something lived in, comfortable, but not boring. He still got on my nerves sometimes, left the cap off the toothpaste, stole my socks, hogged the blanket, but I started to look forward to those things. I started to miss them when they weren't there. He got a part-time job at a local auto shop. I picked up more shifts at the bookstore downtown. We'd cross paths in the kitchen before work, bump into each other brushing teeth at night, fall asleep with his arms slung lazily over my chest. And somewhere along the way, we stopped pretending that any of it was temporary. One night in February, after dinner, we were lying on my bed, limbs tangled, half watching something dumb on TV. I don't even remember the show. I just remember the way he looked at me during a quiet scene. His face calm, unreadable. "What?" I asked, nudging him. He sat up slightly, resting on one elbow. "I've been thinking. Dangerous." He smirked, but his eyes didn't leave mine. "I want to make this official." I blinked. "Official? Like, not just, we sleep in the same bed and eat cereal together, official," he said. "I mean, you're mine, I'm yours, the whole thing." I sat up too, heart pounding. "You sure?" I asked. "Because I don't want you saying that if it's just something you feel like you're supposed to do." He reached for my hand, twining his fingers with mine. "I'm not doing this because I feel like I have to," he said. "I'm doing it because I want to. Because I haven't stopped thinking about you since the night I walked into your room and couldn't sleep." I didn't say anything, I couldn't. So I kissed him, and that was the moment, the real start. After that, things weren't perfect, but they were ours. We had our first fight about something stupid, laundry I think, and didn't talk for a day. Then he came in with a bag of takeout and muttered, "Still mad?" And I rolled my eyes, already forgiving him. We went out in public together, slowly, carefully. Sometimes people stared. Sometimes they didn't. One time, at a diner, an old man muttered something under his breath as we walked past holding hands. Dylan just looked at me and said, "He wishes he had this," and squeezed my fingers tighter. Eventually, we told my mom. She didn't cry, didn't freak out. Just nodded once and said, "I was wondering when you were going to say it out loud." She made lasagna that night. That's how I knew we were okay. One Sunday, Nate and I were out on the back porch. He handed me a beer, then glanced at the yard where Dylan was tinkering with something on the fence. "You love him?" he asked. I didn't even have to think. "Yeah." Nate took a sip of his drink. "Then good, that's all I care about." I smiled. "Thanks." "Just don't let him wear my hoodie again," he added. "He stretches him out. We're not rushing anything. We still live in my mom's house, still share my small bedroom, still argue about dumb things like what to watch on Netflix, or whose turn it is to take out the trash. But we also make each other laugh, and feel safe, and known, and loved. And at night, when he's half asleep with his head on my shoulder and one leg flopped over mine like a possessive dog, I think, this is it. This is what I didn't know I was waiting for. And somehow, against all odds, it was right here all along.